Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's session. We are going to give it a couple of minutes just to make sure everyone has a chance to log in. We are still a little bit early, so we're just going to wait 1 or 2 minutes, and then we will get started. But for now, hang tight, and we'll get rocking and rolling here in just a minute. All right, so it looks like we're just at 2 o'clock right now. I am still going to wait just a few more seconds just to make sure anybody who wants to attend today's session is able to join. I know that we had a pretty healthy number of students that registered to attend. So I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to get in the session if they want to. So we'll get started here in just another minute. And before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping things. If you do have questions that pop up while I am going through my slide deck, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A box. That is going to be moderated by Maggie and Lillian, who are joining us today. And so if you have questions, pop them in there and they will make sure to respond to them there. If you are in the chat, I cannot promise you that that is going to be as moderated as the Q&A, so please pop all of your questions into the Q&A. But now that we have everybody, I think, has been given ample time to log into today's session, I wanted to take just a minute to introduce myself and a couple of my teammates. My name is Caitlin Harada, and I'm the director for the Viterbi Career Connections office. So if you signed up for a careers conversation, you are in the right place. And I'm joined today by Lillian Barajas and Maggie Cutler-Young, and they are both part of the Career Connections team. They will be moderating the Q&A, so feel free to drop any and all questions in the Q&A. They will be responding to those throughout my presentation, but I'm also, depending on how long we go today, there will be some time at the end for some additional questions. So with that being said, I did want to let you know that Jessica Maria had sent over some of the questions that you had when you registered for today's session. So I'm hoping to be able to answer some of those questions with my presentation. And some of them are a little bit specific. So I would like to encourage you when you become a matriculated student, I would love to meet with you and talk more specifically about your situation. But for the purposes of today, what we're going to discuss is really the status of recruitment. As I'm sure you are well aware, the last few years have been really disruptive in not only just our lives, but in the recruitment process. And so I wanted to give you a spring update to answer some of your questions, put your mind at ease, and let you know what are some of the trends and things that we are seeing as we are kind of entering this post-pandemic world. So with that being said, I am going to go ahead and get started. So today, what we're going to talk about is some of the national hiring and recruitment trends, and also how can you prepare for U.S. recruitment. So this is going to be all the things that you need to do as soon as you come to campus. Oops, hit the wrong button. Sorry about that. So first, when it comes to the national hiring and recruitment trends, we're going to really be focusing in on what are the employers' responses to this post-pandemic recruiting landscape, this hiring landscape that we find ourselves in. We will look at the national job outlook, some hiring projections, and also looking at first destination outcomes for the class of 2020. You may be thinking, wow, that's kind of old information, but what we do is we pull our information from the National Association of Colleges and Employers. So we get this information from a nationwide first destination survey, as well as Job Outlook. So NACE is a nonprofit professional organization, really that brings together career services professionals, recruiters, hiring managers, and other hiring entities. And this is where we all come together to collaborate with each other, find out, what are employers looking for? How can we prepare our students? What are students looking for? How can we prepare employers for their future workforce? And so this is where all of this information is coming from when I'm talking about from the national level. Thousands of hiring managers and employers are part of this network, as well as, other career services professionals from across the United States. So if you ever have any questions, you are also welcome to go to naceweb.org and find out for yourself. But for the purposes of our conversation, I'm pulling information from their most recent Job Outlook and also the class of 2020 data. That is the most recent data that they do have available. And the reason being is we survey each graduating class for up to 6 months post-graduation. We do our own analysis when it comes to the Viterbi School of Engineering. We do an analysis when it comes to the USC school. And then we also submit data to the National Association of Colleges and Employers, and they look at national trends. And so it does take a little bit of time to get that pulled together, which is why we only have the class of 2020 available at the moment. 2021 will be coming out probably in the fall semester. All right. Oh, I keep clicking the back button. I'm sorry about that. So let's kind of take a look at the employer's response to this post-pandemic landscape. By and large, there's a huge shift to this idea of hybrid recruiting. So what does that mean for you is that it's going to be very targeted events hosted on campuses. And these are going to be for select students. Sometimes the employers will pull from applicants that have applied to positions that they've posted. Sometimes it is targeting a specific student organization. There are any number of ways that they are targeting who they want to invite to their on-campus sessions. But that also means that there's going to be more opportunities for larger virtual events. And these are typically going to be multi-school events where they will invite USC Viterbi students in addition to some students from other campuses. And so this helps the employer extend their reach, but it is not a Viterbi specific event. However, we always encourage you to still participate in those because sometimes an employer is not going to necessarily have that targeted on-campus recruitment event, or maybe they have it, but you're not a part of their target population for that particular event. There's also a mix of virtual and on-campus career fairs. We have heard sort of a mixed bag reaction when it came to the virtual fair that we hosted this past fall. And then we hosted an on-campus fair this spring. And so we did have some hybrid recruiting events available on campus. And we anticipate continuing to do that in the future. We don't have any notions that it will return completely to on-campus. Similarly, it will not be completely virtual. So you do have to be aware that there's, it's going to be hybrid from here on out. There's also more virtual interviews that are happening. So you need to prepare, how do you meet somebody virtually for the first time? So this is actually seemed to take place of a phone interview. So instead of a phone interview, maybe you'll have a Zoom or WebEx or Skype or Teams interview instead. And this just gives the recruiter an opportunity to see you and hear you and kind of get a different sense of who you are as a candidate. Similarly, in alignment with the multi-school virtual events, we've noticed a trend of employers doing event series. So it wouldn't just necessarily be one event that they're hosting and inviting all students to, but it could be a series throughout the semester. So Those are some things that you can anticipate. Similarly, remote jobs and internships are still around. So there is, I'll go through a slide a little bit later where we talk a little bit more about modality. But this idea of having a virtual job or internship may be a permanent thing for some organizations. If you are a student that requires CPT, the most recent guidelines are expiring at the end of this spring semester. So we are still awaiting guidance from SEVP on if CPT is still going to be available for students that are doing virtual internships this summer and into next year. So we're still awaiting guidance on that, but for right now, they are still being approved. But all that said and done, most of this stuff is going to be the same as it always has been. You have to have a strong social media presence, something that is professional, having a LinkedIn. You're going to have that resume where you're showcasing your involvement and your experiences. You're going to have to network, whether that be in person or whether that be virtually. Polishing those interview skills. Now is a different landscape. You have to perfect not only your phone interview, but your video interview and also an in-person interview. And always along the way, showcasing how you have relevant skills and experience. So kind of taking a look at the national job outlook. So again, this is not going to be specific to engineers per se, but this is a good indicator of what you can expect. So I grabbed this from the job outlook class of 2022. And so this is going to be more recent data. And as you can see from this chart, moving from 2018, which is pre-pandemic, now looking at this post-pandemic landscape, you can see that there's been a huge increase in the plan to hire new grads. So that is great news for you. Even if you're not class of 2022, this is a great thing because it means that more positions are being created, more employers are looking to hire. And so we anticipate that, the pendulum swung a different direction at the height of the pandemic. Now they're kind of coming back, hiring more people. And I don't anticipate that this is going to slow down by the time you're ready to get your full-time job. Also, let's take a look at, modality. How are people working these days? And so again, this comes from the job outlook of 2022 spring update. And as you can see, there is a lot more emphasis on having these hybrid type positions. So while there is still a strong presence of having a fully virtual position, there's not the same emphasis that there was pre-pandemic about, you have to be in the office, you have to be, have a physical presence in order to, work for our organization. So there is going to be more flexibility. I think that's going to be more of a permanent change. I just don't see how we could go back to the days where everybody showed up into the office and, that's where you did your work. And then you went home at the end of the evening, came back the next day. So this is great news depending on, your preferred work style. So you could have that fully in-person experience, or you can have like the hybrid experience or even virtual, depending on, what your specific needs and wants are. So here's where we're going to get more into the class of 2020. So this is specifically, I pulled information from the first destination outcomes for master's students. So you can take a look on the left-hand side, we have all of the nationwide data. And so the knowledge rate is almost 52%. And just for those of you that are unfamiliar with the survey, knowledge rate is not the same as response rate. So for the purposes of this survey, what we do is we do take response rate, but we also take into account some of the information that may not be reported directly from the student into the survey. For example, if I have a student appointment and the student tells me, hey, I accepted this position with Microsoft and this is my title, I can input that into the survey and that counts towards knowledge rate. Similarly, if an academic advisor gives me the heads up that one of their students has landed a position, that can also go towards the knowledge rate. So looking at knowledge rate both nationally and with the USC Viterbi graduates. We know just over half nationwide, but we're at 67.5% knowledge rate for Viterbi. One of the things that I wanted to do is kind of break apart engineering, the engineering disciplines from computer science, because they do have different outcomes. And so I wanted to showcase that here. For the engineering students, you can see that we're right on par with the nationwide data from the class of 2020. Again, this was during, pandemic times. Employers weren't sure what they were doing. Students didn't know if their offers were going to get rescinded or if they were going to move forward. So the fact that we are on par with the nationwide trends is strong. So that's a good thing for engineering students. We had almost 72% employed, about 11% continuing on in education. So that could mean a number of different things. Some of them may have pursued a second master's. Some of them may have pursued a doctoral degree or some additional education. The other is kind of a catch-all. So this could mean that they are, doing military service. This could mean that they are starting their own business. It could mean they are still looking for what it is that they want to do, whether that be graduate school or finding a career. Sometimes it's volunteering or doing something similar to the Peace Corps. And then some students just completely opt out of the process altogether. So that's kind of our catch-all category, what other means. And so if you look at the computer science outcomes, you can see that their outcomes are a little bit different. And I think if you kind of reflect back on to the fact that we all went virtual for the last couple of years and just, are now starting to come back more fully in person, it does make sense that our computer science students were able to find positions pretty quickly and easily, just because everything was reliant on tech. And I believe it will continue to be so. And so you can anticipate that the other engineering majors will have a stronger showing in the next year. We've already pulled our class of 2021 data and it is looking stronger. So that's kind of some outcome stuff. I know that was a question from some of you who have registered. So hopefully this helps in answering that question. All right, so now that you know a little bit more about the trends and how employers are responding, let's talk a little bit more about how to prepare for the U.S. recruitment process. So whether you are a domestic student or international, this information is still going to be helpful because there's a lot of nuances that you may or may not be aware of. So first, virtual recruitment is here to stay. I mentioned at one of our earlier slides that employers have really hung on to this idea of hybrid recruiting. There is a huge time and cost savings associated with doing events virtually as opposed to in person. So what they're going to be doing is doing things like career fairs for large outreach branding events. They'll be doing those smaller targeted events on campus for more intimate populations. Some of the trends that we've noticed is that there's definitely a greater commitment to diversity and equity. So when they are coming to campus, when they're doing their events, they're making sure to highlight and showcase how their organization is really embodying those values. And then another thing to note too is that when there are smaller targeted events, you want to make sure that you get on the invite list. And how you do that is usually going to be by applying for their position. So what they do is they will post a position, they will look at resumes, and then they will invite those that have a strong resume to their on-campus event for, a less formal interaction. So it's not an interview, but it is a good way to kind of understand who are you, what do you bring to the table? Would this, be a relationship that they want to take to an interview situation? Other things to take a look out for is more efficient pre-screening and scheduling systems. So they're using a lot of artificial intelligence to review your resume. Before a human ever looks at it, you're applying to an applicant tracking system, and that system is scanning your resume to make sure that you are a fit for the position that you applied for. There's also things like pre-recorded interviews. So you may have a question, you have to record yourself interviewing before you submit it. There are also, again, if you're more on the computer science side, you can definitely anticipate that there's going to be some kind of coding challenge that you will have to submit before you can sit for an interview. All right. So what does it look like for on-campus recruitment? So everything that we do in our office when it comes to interacting with employers is based on the employer's request. So what we saw this last year were socially distanced events and interviews. So people had to do Trojan check. There was pre-registration requirements, sanitizing and masking requirements, and most of the events were hosted outdoors. Looking forward to this next year, we definitely anticipate there's going to be less restrictions. So even something that just recently happened is there's no longer a requirement to do Trojan check, which is basically your symptom checker before you're allowed to be on campus. There's a lot more fluidity in the ability to show up for events without having your pre-registration approved. So this is obviously going to be subject to change as the state and county health requirements are updated, but we do anticipate that on-campus recruitment events are going to come back. There's going to be less restriction. There's going to be more of an ability to interact with employers, representatives, and do on-campus interviews. More in-person events will be happening, I believe, this upcoming year. So how are you supposed to prepare for all this stuff, right? So now that you know what's going to happen, I really wanted to provide you with some additional resources. The first one is utilize our job and internship toolkit. So even if you are not a matriculated student, you have access to our website, and that means you have access to our toolkit. This has information all the way from, this is your first semester, what should you be doing, all the way through how do you negotiate an offer or your salary. And so it's a really great toolkit that will really walk you step by step from, resume to career. Understanding the applicant tracking system. I mentioned before that there's a huge amount of employers that are using applicant tracking systems when it comes to the job application. And so this is that artificial intelligence process where it scans your resume, it compares you to the job description, and then it will rank you against the other candidates in the pool. So if you are not using the same or similar language from the job description on your resume, chances are you're not going to rank very high. So use our resume toolkit to find out how do you tailor your resume. When you join us in the fall, make sure you come to drop-in hours and have a career advisor look over your resume and help you tailor it more specifically to a position. The applicant tracking systems are definitely not going to go away. And if anything, I see them becoming even more prevalent in the future. Familiarize yourself with the different online platforms. Again, this past couple of years has brought on a bunch of new technologies and new ways to engage. Even within the USC school, we have seen different offices using different platforms for similar events. So career fairs have been on different platforms. Virtual interviews have happened on different platforms. So it's important to understand, what's out there, how do you navigate, and get a little bit of practice in before you have a real life scenario, and it's a little bit higher pressure and higher stakes. Get involved. Now's the time when you enter your first semester with us for you to really engage in the process. That means, being present in your classes, joining student organizations, making sure that you are networking, not just with your peers, but with faculty, staff, employers, alumni, all of those people you want to have in your corner, as quickly as possible, because believe it or not, this first year of your program will fly by really fast, and you'll want to know that you have connections to help you land your first internship and get that job post-graduation. And so the whole idea is engage, not just networking one time, making a connection and letting it fall off, but really following up and pursuing what it is that you are hoping to accomplish before your time with us is over. One of the statistics I heard recently from a NACE webinar was that students that engage with career services are 5.8 times more likely to say that their university prepared them for life after college. So if your goal is to get into industry or have a job of some sort, or even if you want to continue your education, we're here to help you through that process and to support your professional development. So we definitely would encourage you to use our services, come to our events, and engage with our office as well. Let's talk a little bit about recruiting season. So we are on the semester schedule, meaning we have fall, spring, and summer. But when it comes to the recruitment process, something that most students do not understand or recognize or realize when they first come at the end of August is that fall recruiting season has already started. And this is going to be for those positions that start in May or June. So from late August to early October, employers are already looking for summer interns. So while you may have, just been on campus for a couple of weeks, you already need to have your resume ready to go because there are job postings, there are interviews happening, and there are job offers going out before we even get into the new year. So the recruiting process starts early. About 70% of all on-campus or university recruiting happens in the fall semester. But that being said, it can be overwhelming to be in a new location, starting a new program and having to meet a bunch of new people. There is a second recruiting season that happens in the spring, and that's going to be late January to early March. It's definitely a smaller, compressed time frame, but it's also not as many employers are on campus actively engaged because a good majority of them already have filled positions from the fall recruiting season. So if you miss out on fall because you're just like overwhelmed, there's too much stuff going on, totally fine. There's always opportunities in the spring. And we even have students getting internships as late as July for the summer. So even it might be a shortened internship, but there's still opportunities even in the summer to get internships. So let's talk a little bit about some of our flagship events. And this is in alignment with recruiting season. Oops. I don't know why this keeps going back. So let's talk about some of our fall events. We have Trojan Talks that happen, end of August all the way through November. And Trojan Talks are basically employer information sessions. Employers will do things like a straight info session. This is us. Here's our openings. Here's how you apply. We've had CEOs and CTOs and COOs come and do tech talks. We've had the employers kind of get to decide how they want to run their Trojan Talk, but there's been some really interesting ones. And I would encourage you, if you find an employer is doing a Trojan Talk and they're of interest, go. They're a great place to network. We also have on-campus interviews that start in August and go through November. In August, if you decide that you do want to come to USC, which we hope you do, we have a graduate career readiness week. And this is a small group appointments where we meet with incoming graduate students to get you prepared for fall recruiting. As I mentioned, you pretty much have to be ready to go by September 1st if you want to participate in some of the bigger events that we host on campus that are recruiting focused or even networking focused. So Graduate Career Readiness Week is really meant to get you up to speed. In September, we'll have our How to Get Hired series, and this is where we invite our employer partners to come and give professional development workshops. They will also do one-on-one resume reviews with you, as well as one-on-one mock interviews. So this is a great, series to help get you prepared for what's coming up next, which is our Fall Career and Internship Expo. So unlike some other universities, we don't just have a career fair. We have a week long of recruiting events. So this will be a number of different recruiting events, and then also a career fair. So there's opportunities to participate in Trojan Talks, in small group meet and greets. We've had employers do case challenges and robot builds and all kinds of different interesting things where they showcase their organization, and then they meet with you later at the fair. And on occasion, we do have some employers that will do, next day on campus interviews for the students that they met at the fair. In October is when we usually have our networking events. And so there will most likely be an on-campus networking event as well as a virtual event. So it gives opportunities for students to engage with the employers that are able to come to campus and travel, as well as the employers that have decided that that's going to be a virtual event for them. And then in November, we do career and internship boot camp. And boot camp is really a catch-all event for students. If you have missed all of the workshops and all the professional development events that we have done throughout the semester, we kind of run through everything at boot camp in one day. And then fast forward to the spring calendar. Again, we're going to be offering the Trojan Talks, the on-campus interviews. We'll do a second expo. We have a mock interview day, networking events, a virtual industry event. We also have the Viterbi Trek, which is a really cool program where a small group of students will apply and interview for a spot at Trek, which is an engagement with employers. We take you to the employer's location, you meet with them, you interact with them for about half a day. Sometimes it includes like a networking lunch, and you meet with, up to 6 different companies as part of the Viterbi Trek. And it's a really awesome way to explore different organizations. And then we'll do boot camp again at the end of April. Boot camp always happens at the end of each semester, just because that's when students start to think, oh, shoot, I need to, get on my job and internship search. And so that's why we do it at the end of each semester. Additionally, we have all of those big, large events. We have a lot of stuff going on, but we also have a bunch of resources for you outside of just the events. So the Viterbi Career Gateway is really our one-stop shop for, your career development. So this is our online job board. This is where you can schedule advising appointments. This is where you're going to see who's coming to campus for a Trojan Talk. This is going to be where you see who's coming to the Career and Internship Expo. Everything really happens through the Viterbi Career Gateway. So I definitely encourage you, keep your profile up to date, because we'll also send targeted emails out through that database to students that meet requirements for employers looking to do one of those smaller and more intimate sessions. I mentioned advising appointments can be scheduled through Viterbi Career Gateway. And these are set times where you meet with a career advisor and we talk about, your needs specifically when it comes to the job search, the internship search, negotiation, any of that kind of stuff. And then we also offer drop-in hours. So drop-in hours, no appointments required. You just show up and we'll meet with you about your resume, your cover letter, any of those questions that you might have. We do have drop-in hours Monday through Friday, and we do also offer extended hours Monday through Thursday. We do have a number of workshops. Again, these are going to be everything from resume review to networking, interviewing, and also salary negotiation and job offer review. So we have a number of workshops that we encourage you to attend live. That way you can listen to the presentation, ask your questions, and get your answers. We do have recorded workshops available on Viterbi Career Gateway in the resources library. And then we also have some quick tip videos that you can also find on our website. So if you don't want to invest 30 minutes watching a recorded workshop, spend 5 minutes and watch a quick tip video and you'll get the same basic information. But obviously it's not going to be as in-depth as maybe one of the workshops or, having an appointment or drop-in. So those online workshops, the quick tip videos are available to you at any time, which is also helpful because then if you really like working on your resume at 2 o'clock in the morning and you want some quick tips on it, it's available. And then finally, we have Viterbi Link. Viterbi Link you can think about sort of similar to Viterbi's version of LinkedIn. And this is where you will connect with Viterbi alumni. And the great thing about it is you do not have to send a connection request because the alumnus has created an account they've already agreed to connect with you. So you just have to send that first message. They're available to answer some quick questions. They're available for you to do an informational interview. They could review your resume. They could do any number of things, including short and long-term mentorship. So if you need advice directly from somebody who's doing the work that you want to get into, Viterbi Link is a really great place to start. All right. A couple of the last minute things that I want to leave you with today is the fact that when you become a USC Viterbi engineering student, you have the advantage of not one, but two career centers that you have available to you. So Viterbi Career Connections is really going to be your home career services office. And that's because all of the staff that work in the VCC office only work with engineering students. But that being said, you also have the advantage of the USC Career Center. The value in having both is that you get not only access to the Career and Internship Expo and our services and events, but you also have access to the USC All Majors career fairs. You have access to their Trojan Talks. You have access to their services and events. So really, if you were to participate fully in both offices, you can go to up to 5 or 6 career fairs every year, and have your resume reviewed by a bunch of different people, because we all have our own opinions about what should be on a resume. But it's really great to know that you have 2 offices that you can go to, and between the 2 offices, you should never have any gaps in service when it comes to careers. And then finally, I do want to introduce, the staffs. A couple of them are on here with me today, but for those that are not, I wanted to make sure I recognize them as well. So again, I'm Caitlin Harada, Lillian Brajas, and Maggie Cutler-Young are joining me today on this session. But missing from today's session is Patty Dang, and she's one of our assistant directors, and Brittany Chu, who is also an assistant director. So that is our full-time staff, but we also have a number of Viterbi career ambassadors. And these are going to be engineering students that are in your classes. They're the ones that you can go to when you have questions about, should I attend this event, or what should I wear, or what should I bring? How do I prepare for this? Viterbi career ambassadors are really peers that are here to help you and in your professional development. If you do decide to join us, we are actively recruiting for our next Viterbi career ambassadors for fall 2022. So if you're interested, make sure that you find the job posting on Viterbi Career Gateway. We would love to have you join and be a member of our team. We also have a number of advising interns that help us out with some of our events and career advising. They are also experts at resume reviews. So even if you're not able to meet with a full-time staff member, we do have, up to 16 to 18 student interns and career ambassadors that you can meet with as well. And then with that, that pretty much wraps up the content of my presentation today. But I wanted to let you know how you can get in touch with us and stay connected. So we do have our website. You can email us, follow us on Instagram. Our Instagram has come a long way. And so we do have some really cool tips on our Instagram from employers. We'll promote our upcoming events. And so it's a good way to stay connected and just kind of understand what's going on with Viterbi Career Connections. How can I prepare for upcoming events? What's coming up? And then we also have our Facebook and Twitter. We are located in Ronald Tudor Hall on the 2nd floor. And so with that being said, I do want to say a warm congratulations to you for being admitted to the USC Viterbi School of Engineering. I'm sure you all worked diligently and incredibly hard to get this far. I hope that I am able to see you all in the fall. And we do have a few minutes left. So if you would like, if you have any other questions, you are welcome to pop them into the Q&A, and I can go through some of those right now that haven't been answered yet by Lillian or Maggie. All right. So there was one question. Can you please repeat and explain the 6th slide? I don't even know what slide that was, so we're just going to go back to it. What was slide number 6? That was slide number 7. So this is really, so what happens with the National Job Outlook is NACE will send out a survey to employers, and they specifically ask, you know, what are your plans for hiring? Are you staying the same? Are you increasing your hiring, or are you decreasing your hiring? And so looking back at, you know, starting with 2018, you can see in the fall semester, employers said, you know what, we're going to increase our hiring of new grads by about 4%. But when it came to spring, they're like, you know what, spring, we're kind of slowing down. We're not going to hire as many people. So we're actually going to be hiring less. If you fast forward to their job outlook for 2022, you can see over a quarter of employers that were surveyed in the fall said, yes, we are going to be hiring more grads than we previously have. And then for spring, that number even went up a little bit more. So that's what slide 6 is this is just, you know, a survey to employers asking them, do you anticipate you're going to be hiring the same, more or less new grads in this next year? All right. And it looks like we do not have any more open questions. I'm actually going to jump back to slide 19. That way you have our contact information should you want it to ask some additional questions. But if you have other questions, feel free to pop them into the Q&A. I know Maggie, Lillian, and myself can stay on for a couple more minutes. And if you don't have any other questions, that's totally fine too. I do appreciate you all attending today and giving us some of your afternoon. And again, you have our contact information if you come up with some questions later. All right, well, I don't think I see any more questions coming in. Oh, there is one more. Oh, you are welcome. And I hope you too have a wonderful day. Awesome. Well, in that case, thank you all for your time. Really appreciate your attendance and your great questions coming in through the Q&A. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all in the fall. Bye, everyone.